there is a problem with the current map pool, and I am going to talk about it. Specifically in Zerg versus Protoss, we have an issue, guys. We have an issue. There has been too much stuff that has changed all at once. We've seen the Adepts gain -10 to their hit points. They've been nerfed. Hydralisks have gained 10 hit points. They've been buffed. We've seen a very clear buff for Zerg there and a nerf for Protoss. It's a small one, but it's very clear, and it's centralized around two of the most important units in the Zerg vs Protoss and Protoss vs Zerg matchup. Now, that's very important. Why? Because this has come at the same time that we've moved into a drastic new map pool, and this is causing problems in Zerg versus Protoss. This is the matchup I want to talk about today, guys. It is the problem with the current map pool in WCS. It's not a problem in Korea, and it's not because Korean players are gods at StarCraft. It's because they're still playing maps from 2013, because the Korean scene does not like playing crazy new maps. They want the maps to be very standard, very similar to what they're used to, and they want the players to be able to differentiate their skill on stuff that they're comfortable with and that's been tried and tested. In WCS, though, the players are using the map pool, these same maps that you can see up here. Two of the maps from the old pool, Proxima and Abyssal, have hung around, but the rest are all brand new, and there are some crazy new things on them. And some of them have worked out very interesting and created cool games, but I think I can say without a doubt, in Zerg vs Protoss, it's been a hard road for Protoss to adjust to this new map pool. There have been too many changes on these maps, which are making it very difficult for Protoss players to play the game the way they normally do. So let's take a look at some of these maps, and I want to talk about a few of these things, guys. So first of all, let's talk about the number one thing which is important for Protoss, and that is the spread on your bases. Can you take an easy 3 and actually especially 4 bases? If you can do that, you can play quite greedy early on, you can get up to that 4 bases, and you can kind of withstand the barrage of Hydra Baneling, which the Zerg always wants to throw at the Protoss. And if the Zerg can deny the 4th base to Protoss with Hydra Baneling, they usually just win the game. They're like, yeah, I can just whittle you down at high level of play. Now, here on Proxima, your 3 bases look kind of spread, but there's only one way in. There's this one little choke point. It's so easy. You can take a 3rd. You don't need to build any defense except for your mothership core. Like, realistically, it's a map which is fantastic for Protoss. And even when they take the 4th, suddenly they have an avenue there, but still, it's quite a choke point. And out here. And that kind of opens up this area, right, where Zerg can break down those rocks and come in from 2 areas. And this is the one way you see Protoss die on this map, is as they take the 4th, Zerg hits there while hitting here, and sometimes the Protoss player dies. Okay, cool, but it's balanced, right? The Zerg can kill the Protoss, but the Protoss, you know, usually feels almost a little bit favored there. I'd say a lot of Zerg players probably don't really like playing this map. In a best of 3 where they got a couple of vetoes, they'd probably knock this one off the table. Now let's compare that to Odyssey. Let's also quickly, let's talk gold bases as well. Gold bases is the other thing. Gold bases, if you can take it as like your natural, is really, really overpowered, because Zerg can just take it really early on, get a big boost in minerals, and then just be ahead. I was talking to Neeb about this. Neeb said, you know, as long as it's hard to take, it's out in a very exposed position, it's a risk, it's fine. But when it's like on Blood Boil, map we'll be looking at later, it's just too easy to take. Zerg just takes it as their 2nd or 3rd base. Protoss can't punish it. Zerg wins the game. It's just dumb. Here's an example of a well-executed gold base. For the Zerg to get down here, they have to break these rocks, or they need to go all the way around. It's way out in the open, really hard to defend, really hard to hang on to, super easy for the opponent to just push out and kill it. That's a good gold base. Let's go look at Odyssey. Where are you, Odyssey? Here we go. Odyssey, we see a much bigger spread on these bases. These bases, once you go to 3, you've already got this kind of area there and there. If you go to 4, you either take this gold, which is super exposed, or you take this 4th base down here, and there's a huge arc where units can come in from. Not to mention these massive wide areas in front of the natural, which are also very dangerous areas where Hydra Baneling can come in. So this map already, we see the spread of bases is much bigger, and there's a gold base which is a little bit more accessible. It's more exposed, but it's also nicely executed in that it only has 50% less resources than a normal gold base does. It's only got 600 minerals on the light patches, 1,000 on the heavy patches, 6 mineral patches, 1 gas. That's how you normally execute a gold base. Now let's go look at Blood Boil, where we can see an example of a gold not executed correctly. Now this gold, it looks like it's kind of far for you to get to, But realistically, a Zerg can just take this as their natural, this is their third, or some Zergs even are taking this as their third, their natural. And not only that, guys, it has 2 gas geysers and 8 mineral patches. Oh, what? That's a bit of a bit too much on a gold base. Not only that, though, these gold minerals have 1,500 minerals, all 8 patches. So this has more minerals than any other base in the current map pool. And they're gold minerals, and you've got 2 gases. This is a mega base, and it's too easy to take, and it's causing a massive imbalance in the matchup. Combined with that is the problem that there is a gas on the back base, only a single gas on Blood Boil. Protoss is very gas reliant. Protoss can't really secure that gold base. It's too exposed. And being forced into 3 bases, well, these 3 bases are super easy to take, but with only 1 gas on the back, it's really hard. I was talking to Avex, the creator of this map, and he was saying to me that he really wanted to put a rich gas geyser up here. He was like, you know what, I'm going to put a rich gas geyser up here. That way it's like, oh, you're only losing 25% of your gas income from what a normal 2 gas base would be, and you need less probes on it. So that's cool. Blizzard weren't down for it, so he put in 10 mineral patches in this. He also says that it was a mistake from him and Blizzard not checking the minerals on the gold base, that there's 1,500 minerals on each base there. So that's something which I think we really need a hot patch for, hot fix to go through. 1,500 minerals, it's just a mistake. The map maker didn't even mean for that to go through. He feels really bad about it. Because he knows that it is a bit imbalanced. And in hindsight, I asked him, what would you change? He said, I'd just remove the gold minerals. He said, I thought it would be exposed enough here, but realistically, I'd just get rid of it. I think it's an interesting enough map. And he's like, you know, gold bases are interesting, but, you know, maybe this was just too easy to take. I thought it would be easier for players to punish. Turns out it wasn't. I'd just get rid of it. And I'd maybe even put 2 gases back in this base. So we see there, you know, even the map maker is definitely having his second thoughts about that. So we've talked about gold bases now, guys. We've talked about the spread on the bases. We can look at Ascension to Aya. Spread on the bases. The bases, once again, a lot more spread, as we see, than on the Proxima, on the Abyssal Reef, right? That's something which happens, right? Sometimes you'll have maps with more of a spread. But it's not just these big changes, guys. Amazing production, I know. It's also a few small changes. And this is something I wanted to talk about, because not only do you have gold bases coming in, which are ruining Blood Boil. Blood Boil, the gold base ruins it, right? The single gas on the back causes a problem, a very real problem for Protoss. The gold base is a clear imbalance. 100% putting that out there, right? You'll never see this map not get vetoed. And, you know, I hate to think of a Protoss player in a finals having to play this in a best of 7 where they don't have any vetoes. Yeah, it makes me think of, what was that map where it was like a crucible? Oh, I hated that map. I can't even remember what it was, but it was in a grand finals because they couldn't veto it, and I was just shaking my head watching it, like, please no, please no, please no, not this map. It's such a dumb map. You could actually spawn with your bases accessing each other. Like, it was terrible. Anyways, so let's talk about some minor things which exacerbate, because remember, guys, we've had a balance change. You've got these more spread out bases, you've got more accessible gold bases when you've already just adjusted the balance in the matchup, right? You guys can see how this starts to pile up, but there's more. There's more than this. Let's go look at a few other things here. Here we have Abyssal Reef, right? The other map which has stayed in the pool, and along with Proxima, the map which Protoss players are happy with. And this is why Protoss players aren't too unhappy in a best of 3, because they can play those 2 maps if they're lucky and the Zerg doesn't veto it. But as soon as they get to playing a best of 5, they just, how are they going to get 3 wins together? They're really struggling very hard. So here we have Abyssal Reef. Let's talk about 2 other minor things. Now, one is rush distance. If you can get to your opponent's base nice and fast as a Protoss player, it's actually very important. This is the opposite to what a lot of players think. A lot of players think Zerg rush, right? The Zerg's got to get to your base and kill you. You want more space. No, no, no. The Zerg is always the one that wants more space between them and the opponent, because the Zerg is fast. The Zerg can cross that distance very quickly, and the Zerg only gets to that swarm, that overwhelming number, after it's had time to build up, right? This is something for any newer people watching, they might think of Zerg as like, oh, you know, there's the aliens, you want to like turtle up against them. No, actually, the way Zerg work is you need to get in there and start burning out the infestation and blasting it down. You need to keep their drone count down. If you leave Zerg alone, they just build only drones and they get too far ahead and they turn that all into units, and that's when everything falls apart for you. So having a short rush distance is actually really important. Here on Abyssal, you've got quite a fast one. You can go shade to the middle, shade, you're in their mineral line. It's actually great for you to do a depth pressure. Archon drops get across the map pretty quickly, as well as other pressures. So you can move out with an Immortal, a couple sentries, and a depth. You can break these rocks down and pressure their 4th and then recall home. There's lots of pressures, and this is where we bring in the other minor thing, which is what about the spaces on the map? If they're wide open, it favors Zerg. Yes, there's a few wide open areas on this map, but there's so many choke points in the other areas. So Protoss always has a way of pushing across the map through relatively choked up areas where they're not just going to suddenly get surrounded and obliterated by Hydra Baneling or Lingbane Ravager. So Protoss can move out on this map a lot more. So shorter rush distance helps Protoss. Wide open areas is also something which is bad for Protoss. So choke points are better for Protoss. Okay, cool. What's the last one? The last one, guys, is dead space. This is something Showtime brought up when I was talking to him about the maps. And he was saying, you know what, one of the things people aren't really thinking about with this map pool, but something which has hurt Protoss, is there's just not as much dead space. Here on Abyssal, there actually is dead space. Let me explain dead space to any new players. Dead space is these areas on the edge of the map where units can't move, but flying units can. And normally you'll have dead space behind the bases a little bit, but a lot of the new map pool have absolutely no dead space behind the bases. So for example, if you come down here with an Oracle, you can come in from this dead space, appear at the mineral line and start zapping drones. Go back out, go down through the dead space, pop into the main base, kill some drones, run away. Same with Warp Prisms. This is what allows you to use air harassment and Warp Prism, Oracle, Archon Drop, these sort of things very effectively. And that's why it's very important. On this map, I kind of like it because it's got the middle ground of, yeah, there's this great dead space down here. But on this side, this is actually not any dead space. If you fly down there and they've just got queens on the edge, they'll just kill your Oracle or your Warp Prism. So it's really dangerous to fly in that tiny little slither of dead space. A map with a lot more dead space is Proxima. Here we go, Proxima. You've got, look at all this space, guys. You can fly around the entire edge of the map. You can just come in from any angle you want. So Proxima is like the extreme example of dead space. What about the other maps? Sequencer? No dead space. Very little. There's a tiny bit behind your natural, and that's about it. What about Odyssey? No dead space. There's a tiny bit here. It looks like more here, but trust me, that's actually, you can't even fly on that. The edge of the map is actually around the bottom of the gray bit of the base. So you don't really actually have any dead space on Odyssey. Defender's Landing, very little to no dead space. There's like a tiny bit there, but you know, there's a tiny bit below your natural and third as well. Not a lot. Blood Boil, nope, no dead space. Ascension to Iron, no dead space. There's a little bit here, but you've still got to fly over the ground to get to the mineral line, right? You know, having dead space randomly on the edge of the map doesn't really serve a function unless it actually gives you access straight into a mineral line. On Proxima, I'll show you guys Proxima again. The reason it's so powerful is because you can appear from nothingness and you're at the mineral line. You can appear from nothingness, you're at their mineral line. You can do this on all of their first 3-4 bases and do really powerful attacks because of that. So guys, this is where you start to see why there is a problem with the map pool. We're seeing multiple things which have changed all at once. We've seen a balance change around the two most important units in ZVP. The Zerg wants to make Hydra Bane skipping roaches. Oh, Hydras have more hit points now. Thank you. Protoss wants to slow them down. We saw there was a whole meta with Mass Adept. The community was very vocal, and now Adepts have lost 10 hit points. And I think these changes were fine. We're seeing in Korea, they are fine changes. They're not massive. But you combine these with the drastic changes in the WCS map pool, and we are seeing some big impacts. So it's harder to defend your bases, guys. Look at these maps. They're just more spread out. Yes, Defender's Landing, which is up there right now, by the way, is its own special case, as is Sequencer. I'll talk about them at the end. But the bases are harder to defend. They're more spread out. There's gold bases, which in the case of Blood Boil are just ruining the matchup. In Odyssey, I've heard some Protoss players say this is still unfair. This is just too powerful. On the other hand, I've heard some players say, you know, it's not that bad. It's pretty exposed on Odyssey. It runs out pretty fast. I can deal with it. But they say the problem on Odyssey is my bases are too spread out. So it doesn't matter whether or not the gold base is making a difference. I'm still losing to that. Minor issues, the dead space issue. There's just not enough dead space for Protoss to do the air harassment, especially with that queen range. You're combining that queen range, which went through, you know, last year, and then you've got no dead space. And you see there's this cumulative changes which start to really affect the matchup at its core. And it makes it too hard for Protoss to limit the Zerg. Longer rush distances and wide open areas on the maps as well, causing big problems, guys, because Odyssey, big wide open areas. Ascension to Eye is a bit more choked up, but it's still got some wide open areas. Just generally speaking, a few too many wide open areas. And that brings us to the last point, guys, which is the weird maps, right? Let's go look at a couple of the weird maps. We've mostly talked about Ascension to Aya and Odyssey, because those are the two more normal, commonly played maps in the pool. We've kind of said Blood Boil is just a bit broken right now. It's not really worth talking about. What about Sequencer? Now, Sequencer has a massive rush distance. It's really awkward and weird, but it's covered in choke points. No dead space, long rush distance, so it's hard for Protoss to keep Zerg in check. But it's covered in choke points, and their bases aren't that difficult to take. They can be a little bit closer together. There's no gold bases. I actually think Sequencer is one of the more successful maps in the new map pool. I think it's one of the more balanced ones. I know pro players aren't comfortable on it, but that's the same for the Zergs and the Protoss and the Terrans. Everyone's a little bit uncomfortable on this map because it's so different, it's so strange. I think Sequencer is probably the best one of the new maps in terms of not having a clear thing I can point to and say this is broken for this race, but at the other side, it's so uncomfortable for a lot of pros to play on. Maybe that in itself is an issue. I do like that there are a lot of half bases here, well executed in that. It's easier to take them, but they don't have as many resources. I actually think Sequencer is really cool. In the long run, I'm not sure if it's balanced or not. In terms of PvZ, I'm still very up in the air. I'm really waiting for Yenshiping because I've seen some Protoss players play fantastic games on this. I've seen other ones fall apart on it. I'm still kind of unsure about where I stand on where the balance lies on this map, but you can see that it doesn't have the same spread as an Odyssey just yet. That being said, if you think about it, you take your third here as a Protoss, you got to take your fourth there usually, probably. And even if you can't take the fourth there, that's like so far away. If you do, Zerg can take these rocks down. There's still some pretty damn good avenues to attack across here, but I do like that Protoss can like move out in the army and intercept on the map and intercept and fight in these choke points. And really, there's a lot of map control and movement on this map, which creates interesting scenarios. Finally, guys, Defender's Landing, because I haven't talked about it. Is this a problem in the map pool? Yeah, it is. You've made 2 entrances for Protoss, and you just can't do that. It sucks to say this because I like the design here. The idea is really obvious. They're like, well, that's why you take the rocks down, and then you only have 1 entrance to worry about. The problem is, I feel like it's just a bit too hard for Protoss to take those rocks down, because Protoss, if you look at any build order, it's like, get an Adept, go scout them, just build probes. You don't want to waste an overcharge killing some rocks. You don't want to... Your Mothership core takes forever to kill it. You don't really want to squeeze an extra Zealot in, but you kind of have to. So Protoss players, I feel, do have a very awkward opening here. I haven't seen a lot of pro games on this map. I'm assuming the Protoss players are vetoing it. And a specific reason is, how the hell do you defend a 12 pool efficiently? If your wall-off's over here, it's so exposed. How do you defend a 19 drone gas pool hatch roachling all in? It's just so awkward against those because you don't know if it's coming or not. And that's the thing. If a Zerg opens up ambiguously, I feel like a Protoss player is in a very tight spot. Is it completely broken or not? I think Blood Boil is the only map I'm giving that handle 100% to. But I do think it's just too hard for Protoss when you give them 2 openings like this. So far from the Nexus, so wide as well. I feel like, why not just, if you're going to have a second opening, make it the same as on Defender's Landing, where it's like a tiny little choke point. Just get rid of the rocks completely and have a tiny choke point here. I think that would be awesome. What other changes, guys? Since we're moving into that territory, what are the other changes which I would say we should do here? Okay, well, if I'm suggesting a couple of changes, it doesn't need to be everything. This is not me saying the map pool's broken, Protoss players can't win games, guys. What I'm saying in this video is there is a problem right now because there are too many things which have made it hard for Protoss coming in all at once at the same time as balance. When you've got all these new features on the maps, all which are kind of very hard in the current meta for Protoss, and you've just nerfed Protoss and made Zerg stronger, that's too hard. Does that mean you need to just get rid of the maps? Are Blizzard idiots? Are the map designers idiots? Quoting Reddit comments here. No, not at all. But it's just a bit too much at once, and it needs to be toned back. And it could be small changes to start out. First things first, get the hotfix going on Blood Boil, change the gold minerals, just get rid of the gold base at the very least. Just get rid of it, at the least tone them down to like 600 minerals, 1,000 minerals, like half minerals. Because that base is just ridiculous right now. 6 mineral patches as well. There shouldn't be 8 mineral patches there. What else? Maybe choke up some of the areas on the maps a little bit more. Maybe add a little bit more dead space. Maybe that's all you need to do. Maybe the spread on Odyssey and Ascension to Aya is okay if Protoss players can get in there with their Oracles and Warp Prisms a little bit easier. But it's just the combination right now of the fact that the Oracle openings, the Archon drop openings aren't working. The bases are more spread out. And Protoss has just been nerfed, Zerg's been buffed. It's too much at once. Something needs to change, and I really think Blizzard right now should be putting in a few hot fixes on these maps to make them a bit fairer. Getting rid of the gold bases or changing them, either choking up the bases or adding more dead space. I think we need a couple changes right now, or there is going to be a lot of unhappy people in Twitch chat come the finals of the next few events, because I have a feeling we'll see a lot of Zerg versus Zerg, and hopefully there'll be a few Terrans that mix things up as well, because when you get to the best of 5 and best of 7 stages, when Protoss players can't veto any of these maps, or they can only veto one map, I think they're going to struggle really hard, and I just imagine a Laser, Serral, Nurture, these top Zergs just blazing their way through a bracket and tearing it apart. So these have been my thoughts. I talked to a lot of pros, I talked to a few map makers, and I realize I think I've kind of made it reasonably concise. I've been talking for 20 minutes about maps. I know that's a long time, but this is like, I was like, okay, there's a lot of thoughts here. I'm not 100%. You just need to do this. All I can draw as a definite conclusion from this is Blood Boil really needs a fix right now, number one. And number two, some of these things should be toned back. Does everything need to change? Does everything need to go? No, but I think it is important that some of these things change very, very soon. So guys, let me know your thoughts, your own analysis. Maybe you disagree, maybe you agree, maybe you think there's something I didn't emphasize enough. Let me know in the comments section below. Don't forget to subscribe and like and all that good stuff. Thanks for hanging out, guys. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time. Don't forget to hug a watermelon, kick a walrus, and of course, punch a cactus to the moon. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye and good night.